Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to have a little bit of fun. You see, we know that Shadows of Change is going to get a rather hefty update, with all the factions involved getting some brand new units, or lord choices, hero choices, and even some legendary heroes. I must say, the sheer amount of stuff that's actually coming in did take me by surprise. We already know the stuff that's coming for Grand Cathay, but we don't know about the stuff that's coming for Tzeentch and Kislev. So why not make a prediction? We've done this in the past, but we didn't know what to expect in terms of numbers, so now I think it's probably time to revisit that video, have a little bit of fun, and just look at things kind of logically and in line with what we can expect. Obviously, it's quite important to note that units do count as everything, so that would be infantry, cavalry, monsters, artillery pieces, all that usual type of stuff. So, yeah, without further ado, let's begin. So we'll start with Tzeentch. So, when it came to Tzeentch, we already had a legendary hero, and we had 3 new units, the Zangors, the Cockatrice, and the Mutilated Vortex Beast. That means what's missing so far is a generic lord, a generic hero, and then 2 missing units. As far as I've seen from the actual blog, there's no hints towards the Tzeentchian stuff, which is a bit of a shame, but yeah, I think we can already more or less see what we're missing here. So in terms of missing generic Lord and Hero options, what we're actually missing is the generic Chaos Lord of Tzeentch, and finally the Exalted Hero of Tzeentch. These are the melee variants. Now you might be thinking, why would these be added in when really this is a spellcaster-focused faction? And the fact is, even on the tabletop, the melee versions were quite popular. It'd be really cool if Creative Assembly decided to add them in with their proper weapons, so giving them a halberd, and, you know, the usual stuff. So this would be a chariot mount, a horse mount, and a Disc of Tzeentch would be amazing, as that would allow people to relive their old tabletop armies. Naturally, with the Lord, if you decided to ascend to Demon Princehood, you would then get a Law of Magic, because that's what makes sense there. But other than that, I mean, it's pretty simple, and I think that that's what people are going to like. This would also benefit you if you decide to play one of the Warriors of Chaos factions that has access to Tzeentchian units, so again, keeping on themes and helping multiple factions, which, yeah, I mean, why not, right? There could be a possibility that they went with a different type of hero, which would be the Exalted Flamer of Tzeentch, renamed to a Pyrocaster, because obviously the Exalted Flamer already exists as a unit. It's one of these weird things where Creative Assembly weren't really going through the proper names. But I feel like if they do that, it'll probably be an FLC down the line just as a way to, you know, hype stuff up in the future, or just finally finish off the Tzeentchian roster. Personally, I would prefer the melee versions of stuff, mostly because, again, it helps the Warriors of Chaos, you can kind of get that done, and be sorted from there. Alright, I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but it was in the art book, and Creative Assembly seemed to be very keen on flying mounts for some reason in this patch. So, what about the Chimera? So, the Chimera is a big flying beastie. It's supposed to be stronger than the Manticore. It could be a single entity monster, so flying very fast, doing a lot more damage than a standard Manticore, and it could also be used as a mount for the Lord and Hero options for the Mortal-based Lords, which means that you could use them in the Warriors of Chaos roster and the Tzeentchian roster also. I kind of see this happening. I don't know why, I'm just gravitating towards that. In a perfect world, we'd also get the Chimera sent off to the Beastmen, so 3 factions can benefit. Yes, the Beastmen have been really lucky when it comes to the Shadows of Change release, but I mean, why not, right? It's something that you kind of want with them. Big flying beastie would always be nice, just to add in a higher tier version of the Manticore, essentially. But yeah, I'm gravitating towards a flying thing. I honestly think that we're going to get a few flying things overall. I mean, we've got 2 for Cathay, 1 for Tzeentch would be kind of cool, and I think we're going to get 1 for Kislev. Now, for the last unit, there's 2 things that could happen. Either we could get the Fireworm of Tzeentch, which is something really big and impressive, which I imagine if CA are going to be going on an apology tour, this is something that they might consider. Essentially, this is a Chaos Spawn of Tzeentch, like the Mutilated Vortex Beast and like the other Chaos Spawn, but it's large, it's good for range damage. This is a proper God Touch spawn, which would be absolutely amazing because we know that this falls part of the Warhammer Fantasy IP. It could even be made a little bit better with some bound spells and, you know, a flaming attack which is fairly ranged, but it's mostly there to do damage physically, moving fairly quickly because it is avian. I would love this. I would absolutely love this. Keep in mind that there's not a lot of missing stuff which is actually unique, and it does look like they're going for missing unique stuff rather than unit variants. Now, the other option, which admittedly I would prefer, would be some really unique new form of aspiring champion for Tzeentch. Again, usable by the Warriors of Chaos and the Tzeentchian Monogod factions. And yes, it's not a unique unit per se because it's a bit of a reskin, but it would require some help from Games Workshop to design something new, especially as we never really had aspiring champions. I imagine that we will get something like Blight Kings and, Wrathmongers, Skull Reapers and all that down the line, maybe with an End Times focused DLC, but that can wait for Khorne and for Nurgle because they still have quite a few things which is still missing. However, Tzeentch and Slaanesh never really had their aspiring champions, so it might be time to introduce them a little bit earlier, as they wouldn't really fall under the End Times IP. Let's be honest, it would be kind of cool to just get some aspiring champion style units, some heavy elite troopers, which aren't the basic aspiring champions, some god-touched ones with a really unique look to them, so these ones would look very, very Tzeentchian. Give them halberds and shields, and there you go, all sorted. I think that would work really well. I mean, in a perfect world, we'd get something like this and the Fireworm, but maybe they've got some plans later down the line. So something like this would be pretty decent, I think. Now, Creative Assembly could actually surprise us and finally introduce new demons, but since Games Workshop hasn't really introduced new demons since... Good lord, when did Games Workshop last introduce new demons? It's been a while. Yeah, I don't think we're getting anything new. For some reason, Games Workshop have been kind of apprehensive about introducing new demons. Technically, we had some new stuff for Age of Sigmar, which is like the whole harp situation, but that's just more demonettes. It's not really a new demon. Those models are feeling fairly outdated too. It would be nice to see an update from them from GW, but let's not get distracted. I think overall, getting the Melee Lord and Hero for Tzeentch would be quite useful for both the Monogods and the Standard. A Chimera in general is just super cool, and I imagine that designers would have a lot of fun with that because they'd have to animate for the heads and all that type of stuff. And then with the units, yeah, that works out quite well. It's one of these things where I'm trying to make sure that it's not too newer stuff, if you get what I mean, because if we look towards like the Cathay Lion, that's going to be using a lot of the animations and the rig from the bog standard Griffin that we get with the Empire, and, well, yeah, the Moonbird is going to be using the animations from the Phoenixes. So everything that I've kind of stated would mostly use the same animations, especially since we already have Halberdier units. That's why I was going for the Aspiring Champions. The Chaos Lords already exist, they just need to have an asset swap, and then use some other unique animations that have been added in throughout, Champions of Chaos, introduced the Disc of Tzeentch properly, and so on. So that kind of all makes sense to me. So yeah, I say I would be fairly content with this for Tzeentch, just to add in pretty much what's missing from the roster, plus Chimera mounts would be great anyway. Alright, so Kislev is going to be a bit different, because Kislev had a hero option being introduced. Those are the Hag Witches. They had 3 different units introduced already, which was the Akshina Ambushers, the Thing in the Woods, and the Incarnate Elemental of Beasts. So what they're missing so far is a legendary hero, a generic Lord option, and then 2 unique units. Now this one's going to be quite tough, same thing as what happens with Grand Cathay, mostly because, well, nobody has access to the Kislev army book, barring Games Workshop and Creative Assembly. It's a bit of a shame, because they've recently announced that Kislev is not coming anytime soon for the tabletop, and I really wanted to actually do a Kislev army. It's one of those things where, come on, you've seen the miniatures because you've seen the models, right? They're in the game, they look fantastic. I would love to have a hybrid force. Now there's things that we can already outright confirm. We know that the Lore of the Hags is coming because it was confirmed via the Total War Access email. Same thing with Catherine Sled, which was confirmed on the blog. Those are FLCs at the bottom, which is kind of odd considering that we won't be getting Hag Mothers because apparently they just don't exist. We have Hag Witches, but not Mums because Games Workshop, I guess. I think that's probably the best way to go. It's probably Games Workshop saying it, as really all you needed to do was just an asset swap and that's it. That's fine though, because we do have a really good mod which introduces Hag Mothers, so yeah, we're sorted. The legendary hero we pretty much already know because there's been leaks left, right, and center, and that is the Golden Knight. So this is actually quite interesting because obviously Kislev is lacking on a little bit of melee power, so seeing a character being introduced, which is going to be uprun and personal. The Golden Knight we know next to nothing about. What we do know is that she's taken over her father's position, as this seems to be a hereditary thing, and she's got a very nice looking horse. It's something else that was basically cut content. If you look in the art book, the Warhammer 31, her horse was there. It's something that I'm going to be referencing quite a few times. So yeah, I imagine that she'll have access to a horse, she'll have access to a bear mount, and she'll have a different amount of weapons, I guess, depending on what she rides. So on a horse, she'll have a lance. I don't know if bears... Do bear riders have lances? Yeah, I think they do. So probably on that there, but then on foot, if we actually get her on foot, she'd have a sword and board. A lot of people have been waiting for this character, and it's about time that Kislev got a proper legendary hero. Yes, we do have the vampire, but she's a vampire, right? I'm talking about a proper mortal who can actually get up front and personal and do some damage. Alright, this is where things get a little bit difficult. You see, no hag mothers is a bit of a surprise, to be honest. Mostly because, well, this is a hag kind of focused DLC, Ungles and stuff like that, but apparently Ungles are just not happening yet. Maybe in the future, but it's one of those grey areas. So, there's only two things I can actually think of. The Druzina is something, but that was technically a hero back in 6th edition. Mind you, there were no proper, things in 6th edition. It was just that weird supplement. But it would be a hybrid character, you know, it's something that you've seen in Mordheim too. So, hand weapon, probably a pistol, mounted on a horse, mounted on a bear, there you go. Something like that could actually fit quite well, as the Druzina were both Ungles and Gospodars, so you can have a little bit more of an Ungle feel to them, and kind of represent the Ungles without showing the Ungles. Now, you might be wondering why this when we already have a Boyar. Well, the Boyar itself is very focused on melee combat. It's got a few buffs here and there, but it's frontline, right? The Druzina could kind of work as a skirmish-focusing character. Maybe give it a little bit of buffs and stuff like that. It's kind of like what we have with Grand Cathay now, right? We've got the Magistrate, and then we also have the Celestial General. So there's nothing really saying that you can't have two melee-focused characters, with one being more focused on something else. Skirmish combat would work quite well, as it also fits in the theme with the Ekshina ambushes situation. I think something like that would work out quite well, and I don't know. I'm going through this because this is the only thing that kind of calls out to me. Now, in theory, they could come up with something totally left field and surprise us, or even just bring in a Patriarch Lord, but I feel like anything to do with religion in Kislev is probably best served in a future DLC, as I do think that Kislev will get at least one more DLC in the future. It just kind of makes sense, especially for a very hyped up faction that we know has a complete army book. It's just... we can't see it yet. And yes, I've said that twice now, because I really, really am disappointed that we're going to have to wait to be able to play Kislev on the tabletop. My heart. But you never know. Alright, so we have 2 missing units here, because we know that they're getting 5. I really think that we're going to get something kind of monstrous. We don't really have a lot of monstrous stuff for Kislev, but it does kind of make sense. In a perfect world, it would be something like a Frost Fiend, which has been historically described as a giant frost bat or something. I don't know if they'd go against the bats and make it an owl, but yeah, I don't know. Something like that just kind of makes a lot of sense to me, having a big flying entity creature, as Kislev's kind of lacking on the flying stuff at the moment. Now, not every faction does need a flying unit. This is something that needs to be stated very heavily, but it just kind of makes sense to have, you know, eyes in the sky situation, right? Now, they could do something totally left field and do like some sort of frost dragon, as we know that frost dragons do exist in the lore. However, there have been no proper illustrations or descriptions of it, so I don't know, man. For all we know, it could just be a non-flying dragon or something, which, does it count as a dragon? I don't know. Personally, big flying creature would be the biggest thing for me. I would love to see like a giant frost owl or something. It would be kind of cool. But there definitely needs to be something more flashy and looking a little bit more, you know, Kislevite. I know I'm trying to make my peace with the whole thing in the woods situation and the incarnate elemental, but it would just be nice to see something more frozen with the frozen themed army, right? Alright, the last unit is a basic no-brainer. It's a fucking bear with a mounted machine gun. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, CA. I mean, it would be kind of funny, but no. I think that the bear stuff needs to stay more with a possible religious DLC. And we already had one bear unit. The Ekshina ambushers are wearing bear skins. So that's enough for one. Honestly, it's quite tough to say with regards to Kislev. I mean, someone pointed out very recently that the Corsairs are actually tier 2. So maybe we could actually see a tier 1 unit being introduced. Maybe with additional hand weapons and sword and board or spears. Variants, I imagine, don't count as unique units, they just count as variants. It could be a nice way to introduce some units that aren't actually hybrid, because we have a lot of hybrid stuff, which fits with the theme of Kislev, but it would also be nice to kind of get something a little bit different. mean, in the perfect world, these would be Ungals, and we'd have them on horseback too, but it seems like Games Workshop, I think, is Games Workshop. It could just be CA not seeing the point of them, but yeah. So maybe a tier 1 unit. I think that's pretty much all that's there. Now, I could be very wrong, but since someone pointed out that they're missing tier 1 units, that's all I've been thinking about. It wouldn't be the most exciting thing, though, so maybe they want to do some sort of Leshy. We already kind of have that with the Incarnate Elemental, but like a smaller variant, a little bit visually distinct. Monstrous infantry style, so they'd be coming in groups of, 16 on Ultra? The idea is just, keeping to the theme of Mother Ostankya. Again, this is why I'm pretty disappointed that we're not going to be getting any sort of Ungals, because, yeah, they revere the Hag Mothers and stuff, right? It's a bit of an odd thing. Again, Kislev, really tough to think about. We don't know exactly where we stand with Kislev, who is still active, who isn't active, and so on. I really wish that the army book was out already so we could actually be able to talk about stuff properly, but until Games Workshop decide to release it, both myself and you guys are kind of left in the dark. Which, yeah, I mean, either way, a melee-focused skirmishing lord I would like. Golden Knight would be pretty damn cool. And pretty much anything else would just be nice. As long as it's not a freaking bear, I'll be happy. It could literally be anything else. Just, it's too much bears so far, right? There's way too many bears in Kislev, and it feels a little bit overdone. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. It's something very different, I just kind of wanted to redo the video and talk about this, giving my own personal expectations now that we've had 24 hours to think about it and all that type of stuff. Yeah, I'm pretty excited. Time will tell, but the Cathay stuff is definitely very, very cool, so I'm fairly excited to see what can happen here. It's all a matter of time and the effort. I do hope that Creative Assembly are also thinking about future stuff too, mostly unit variants. Finally give the Chaos Warriors of Tzeentch the other style of weaponry, because you might as well at this point. The armor exists, the rigs and animation exists, it wouldn't really cost too much, from personal experience. It's literally just going into the DB files and changing a few things around. It would just be nice to have the options rather than not have the options. The mods do exist for that, but it would be nice to get that officially so the modders can focus on, making some new awesome stuff rather than just making unit variants, right? Yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. This video should come out on time, I hope. But yeah, have a good day.